So what you're about to see here is an interview I did with the vice presidential candidate for the Party of Socialism and Liberation. That's the PSL. The PSL is running a presidential platform this year under Claudia de la Cruz, who is a Bronx woman who is running for president under this platform. This interview doesn't have a lot of context to it. I didn't really do a good intro, and I didn't really do a good outro. We ended abruptly when she was done answering questions. I wasn't really sure what to do with this interview. We're putting together a documentary now about the Party of Socialism and Liberation, my experiences with them, what their activity has been like in the area of Albuquerque, New Mexico, and what their presidential platform looks like this year. But while we're working on that documentary, I'm very firmly in this belief that the best thing to do is to always let a conversation be out and open so people can look at it. So that's what this is. This is the interview that I had with the vice presidential candidate, Karina Garcia, and what she had to say when I wanted to ask her some questions really specifically about how her campaign in the PSL affected local New Mexicans. This is what Karina Garcia had to say in our conversation, and if you'd like to catch that documentary, stay tuned to this channel, or you can catch me anytime, 8 a.m. on Channel 27 Comcast here in Albuquerque. Thank you. As you've been going around, I hear this question all the time. Why do you want to vote third party? That's something that's pretty hard for people. I'd like to know. I get that question all the time. Yeah. Aren't you spoiling the vote? What are your answer to some of those people like that?
I'd rather vote for what I want and not get it than vote for what I don't want and get it. I don't think, for me, voting for the Democratic Party, voting for the Republican Party, for me that's wasting my vote. Because it's saying that I support this. It's giving them the legitimacy that they're seeking and that they don't deserve. And so for me, it's actually much bigger than voting, period, because what we need in this country is more than just, come out and vote between the two worst people in the country in November. It's about building a socialist movement. We're trying to build a real independent working class movement. And that's something that is not going to be accomplished by just voting. It's something that you build every day by being part of your community, by being involved in different struggles. The vote is one part of a much larger campaign that is getting our people organized.
And, when it comes to figuring out how that organization is going to look like in the future, I don't know sometimes if on a local level, if there's always the same kind of push by third parties. I think we're in a good state for third parties. One of the best third party campaigns came out of our state. And I think you're in the right atmosphere here. Do you think that there's more that your party could do on a local level on actually getting people maybe on positions that might be winnable here?
Well, I think when people talk about politics sometimes in this country, they only talk about electoral politics. And the truth is, electoral politics is a small part of what we actually consider politics. Because the truth is, our lives are affected every day by the decisions of a handful of billionaires who have bought and paid for the politicians who ultimately represent the same interests, right? The interests of the billionaires of Wall Street, of ExxonMobil. And so, when we talk about politics, we're thinking about building organization in our class to fight for the things that we need and that we deserve. And so if you think about any social movements, the way that people have been able to accomplish any progressive change, it comes from the struggle of unions, it comes from strikes, it comes from civil disobedience, it comes from door knocking, it comes from building big protests and having a sustained movement where you're actually making your own demands and where you're building power, political power. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to build an electoral party. We're trying to build a party that can actually fight for and win the things that we deserve in our communities. And so, we're participating in this election. We want to provide socialist solutions to the problems that we're facing. We want to be able to intervene. We want to be able to talk to our people and ultimately grow. And so this organizing that we're doing right now on this electoral front, which I said is just one part of a much larger struggle, right? Because our party is not just, we don't just come around in November and say, come vote for us. Like, we organize in housing struggles, we organize in union struggles, we organize, against the occupation of Palestine, for immigrant rights, for women's liberation. Like, those are the things that you do every day. And at the same time, we cannot afford to ignore the elections, because a lot of working class people are still paying attention to that. And we're being sold the lie that if we vote for the Democrats, they're going to protect us against fascism. We're in fascism. The Project 2025 that they like to use to scare us into submission and following them again, that's been happening. Let's talk about Project 2021 and 2022 and Project 2023 and 2024. Like, the ruling class always has a project.
And one of the ways that I think I personally always try to go against those things that I think we both would agree on, that are problems facing the people who can't get into the ballot. But you're trying to get into the ballot now, and now you're on the ballot for people here in our state. And one of the people that I also voted for was our current Secretary of Interior, Deb Haaland.
Okay.
I was happy to vote for someone that I felt would represent the indigenous issues that I wanted to fight for. On your campaign website, one of the ways it says you want to help transform that kind of democracy, you're saying, is by eliminating the Senate, by eliminating the Supreme Court.
Yes.
I mean, I'm someone who voted for Deb Haaland, and when she comes back from serving as Secretary of Interior, I plan to vote for her again. I mean, I have a little bit of hesitation hearing the idea that you'd want to essentially strip a representative that I am pretty eager to vote for again. I mean, what would you say to one of our voters who might be coming from a place like that?
Yeah. Well, I would say that we want to abolish the Senate of millionaires, right? The thing is, they're selected, it's not that the individuals who participate in the Senate are the worst people and, like, we have something against Deb Haaland in particular, right? It's that the capitalist class ultimately controls the political system that we have right now. And that for us to actually have working class people have power in this government, we actually need a new government. So when we talk about, abolish the Senate, we could have a House. We could have a National Assembly. No. We could have a National Assembly that isn't dominated by a bunch of millionaires, that actually is more representative, more democratic than the Senate is, right? We could have a National Assembly where there's not only representation for the different states and the different cities, but also for organizations, for people's organizations, for the students, for workers of all different trades. So, like, we have to also, I know we're in a particular political system right now, but it's not the only political system. It's not the only way to organize society.
I guess then what I'm interested in knowing is, you're running for president, in your case, the vice presidential office. I can't tell if the campaign is focused on getting into the presidency and making those shifts while you're sitting there in the presidency, or if it's kind of a goal that just at the end of the day, at some point, is there some other kind of national referendum that you're looking to have that would actually start changing our government? I mean, that's it seems like it's an interesting thing to put on a presidential platform.
Well, I want to be really clear. Like, this is not a symbolic campaign. We're not just doing this just to do it, right? We really are trying to build power and organization. And in all the different states, we're about to be on 22 states. That's not because somebody made it easy for us, right? That's because we have people on the ground who are gathering, as you said, and as you've done in your life, who are gathering thousands of petitions, who are becoming more politically engaged, even when everyone is telling them that the best they can do is vote for Genocide Joe. They're saying, no, it's not the best we can do. We could do better. And in fact, neither one of these parties represents our interests. We'd rather build our own organization than continue to legitimize your system. And so building that kind of organization, this is what I mean about building a movement, a social movement, like where we ultimately win changes, 8-hour workday, civil rights, ending child labor. That's all from social movements, from struggles. None of that came from the senators. None of that came from our current political system. It's the people that have been in motion fighting that system. And then the Senate has different laws. And then they change their tune. And the truth is, the people are able to win and have won reforms under Republicans and Democrats, right? Like, they've been telling the immigrant community for decades that the Democrats are going to protect us and they're for immigrant rights and this and that and the other. They haven't passed anything. In fact, the amnesty that was passed that did legalize millions of people was under Reagan, who is no friend of the working class, right? No friend of the immigrants. But he passed a amnesty. And the same can be said about Nixon, who ended up passing affirmative action. It's not because Nixon is a good person and he represents, like, you know, black liberation. It's because there was a movement and he responded to that. And that's what we're trying to build.
So assuming then you're at the front of that movement,
Yeah.
you know, you have presidents that have really failed to secure things in Congresses that weren't able to codify abortion rights when they had every opportunity to do
Yes.
so. We've had Democrat presidents that continuously lead war and expanding of those budgets. I mean, isn't the idea of seeking an office to suggest that in that office you could also be part of that change? I mean, the reason I vote third party is because I would rather see you in charge of those decisions rather than the current people who are winning those elections. It seems like it's an odd thing to suggest of, I want to run to capture a vote, but we want to now completely reorganize the system to get votes. I mean,
Why is that? I don't see a contradiction in that at all.
Well, one of your ideas then is the idea of
Like,
seizing the top 100 companies, right?
definitely, we have to reorganize the economy to actually make anything different.
And I agree,
If the
yeah.
same corporations are making all of the decisions about the price of rent, about the price of housing, about whether or not we're going to have public education, if the same people are making all those decisions, then we're not going to get anywhere,
Can I
right?
ask what happens when, though you kind of do have a situation where now you've seized the top 100 companies, as you've suggested, and you kind of put that in a situation where now Republicans are kind of in the same boat with you now, right? I mean, Trump's in a case where
No, I don't see them I don't see the Republicans in our vote, and I don't see either one of those parties supporting.
Companies have been seized. And
Seize the top 100 corporations. That's just the beginning. That's an example to show people what is actually possible, right? That it's to bring out the.
Because they'll be in the government again at some point, right? When you lose the next election, the Republicans could easily come back and they have 100 companies. And I know Trump would be very excited to have all the oil companies
We're
next
not going to win our rights by winning over the ruling class. We're going to win our rights by winning over the people to fight. And that's not going to happen in one election. That's going to happen because the people are willing to fight. The only way to actually seize the top 100 corporations is if we have a mass movement. And that's what we're focused on, building a mass movement. Now, that's not going to happen on its own because the little minuscule breadcrumb mediocre solutions that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are offering to people are never going to bring our people out to join a movement. All they're going to do is continue to do the same thing that they've been doing, which is to lead more people to apathy, to depression, and to not participating in the political system at all. We're saying there are solutions to these problems. These are some of the solutions, that if we actually had some political control over our resources, we could cap the rent, we could control the prices, we could actually abolish health insurance companies altogether who have been preventing us from getting the care that we need and killing our people. These things are possible, but they're not possible in the framework of these two corporate parties. They're never going to give those solutions. They'll say tax the rich. We don't want to just tax the rich. We want them out of power completely. We don't want a system that makes billionaires. We want to end them. So if we don't actually get out on the street, have an interview with you, and be able to talk about that program, they're never going to do it. So how is it that other people get socialist solutions to the problems? The socialists need to talk. They need to compete with these people to be able to say, we need another program. These are our demands. These are not the demands that this Ford Foundation supported NGO is giving us. No. This is a problem these are the solutions that will actually meet the scale of the problem. If we actually want to end climate change, then we actually have to cut carbon dioxide emissions. We actually have to use resources to invest in renewable energy. We can't invest in renewable energy if ExxonMobil and a few CEOs get to make those decisions, right?
ExxonMobil has a massive amount of their state.
And I'm sure they have They get
And I
get
wanna tell you
everything
why
they
this
pay
resonates
for.
with me too. And I'd love if I could tell you why I like that message, why it resonates with me. Because the reason I don't want to vote for either party in the presidency is because I understand that they will just essentially keep going down that same path that you're talking about. It kind of leads me to that last question though, which is, it's why in my own life when I've struggled with housing, when I've struggled to be able to have the kind of work I need, it reminds me that I wanted the local leaders in my community to have more of that authority. When you say you want to cut dioxide, you want to cut our oil drilling, things like that, it does make me nervous because there's over a third of our tax credits currently come from oil in our state. Over 15% of our jobs in their state come from the oil industry.
Yeah.
I think that we need to address those things, but I think it should be our states to address.
Yeah.
And I think it always makes me nervous to see people who run on federal platforms who are encouraging the federal government should come to our state and tell us how to do things.
I think it makes a lot of people nervous. If they think that they're going to lose their livelihood, then they're going to be nervous about that. The truth of the matter is that people have been losing their livelihood for a long time, right? Since 1996, 30 million jobs have been mass layoffs all around the country. If the people feel like the only way for us to stop climate change is by losing their livelihood, if there's no guarantee from the government that, no, if we need to reinvest in a new renewable sources of energy, that doesn't mean you have to be on the street. No, that's not what it needs to mean. That's what we're trying to fight. We're trying to fight the idea that the people who work in fossil fuels have to have some kind of a stake in this poisonous industry. We're saying the people who work in fossil, they should actually have a guarantee from the government that whatever we need to do, they have a job as a right. They're going to have health care, they're going to have retirement. Those are basic constitutional rights that they're going to have. Then they don't have to tie themselves together with fossil fuel because they know that they can actually get a different job. They can go back to school. They can find some new industry because their rights are guaranteed. And that's why we're not just talking about these short-term little breadcrumb solutions, because the people need rights. And if the CEOs and the billionaires continue to dominate our economy and dominate our political system, the people are never going to have those rights.
I mean, our next two biggest exports are pecans and hatch green chili. It's hard for me to suggest that we could maybe...
You need to think bigger then. I have to tell you need to think bigger, because the truth of the matter is, it's not just about your state, and your state shouldn't be alone. That's the thing. Your state is part of the United States of America. We have trillions of dollars every year that they spend on war and genocide. We could use those trillions of dollars to invest in infrastructure. That means we could create millions of jobs where people are doing useful work. They don't just have to join the military to be able to get a decent job. The fact is, there's 45,000 bridges in this country that are in danger, right? The infrastructure is crumbling. Our schools have a D+ rating in terms of their infrastructure. They're not set up for climate change. These are actually practical things that people could do for employment. And if we were to take the money that they're using for endless wars and use it to invest in our economy, invest in infrastructure programs, invest in housing, that means the concrete creation of millions of jobs. So I don't think we should think about it as like, oh, this is what we have right now. This is the only possibility. That's exactly what we're trying to break away from. We're saying we live in the richest country in the world. There's no reason our people should be living on the streets. There's no reason our people should be without health care, without any kind of retirement. We can actually create meaningful work for people. And what it means is that we would have to take back what's been stolen from us. Since 2022, the top 100, this is why we're focusing on the top 100. The top 100 made over $1 trillion. Over $1 trillion. Like, this is money that they made from price gouging the American people. They made that money by raising the price on everything that we need. And they did it because they could. They raised the price of food, they raised the price of housing, they raised the price of gas. All of the things that we need, they raised the price. It's undeniable at this point that it was price gouging, and it had nothing to do with workers' wages. We need that money back. Just like they stole it, we could take that money back. And if we were to take that money back, we could have so much more than what we have right now. If they could spend $1 trillion on some F-35 fighter jet program on these jets that don't even work, they could spend $1.7 trillion on housing so that people have dignified housing that is safe, that is actually meeting the environmental needs that are happening in our changing climate. So I think we got to think bigger, and I think that is honestly the true purpose of our campaign. It is to think bigger, it is to organize, and it is to stop wasting our energy on these worthless corporate parties.
Well, at the end of the day,
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
yeah, no, we'll wrap it
Can
up.
we get final question?
Yeah, that sounds
yeah,
good.
no.
It's after 9.
Oh, I think that's probably good.
Yeah, I think we
we got a lot of stuff.
Sorry, we had
Yeah, no problem. Hey, thank you so much. All right, I get.